So hello and welcome to this video on the Befaco Kickall. Let's check out what's to come. Let me show you why this is way more than just a kick, and then we'll get into it. So the Kickall is Befaco's kick drum module, and it's made in the way that Manu or Diego or anyone from the Befaco team effectively would patch up a bass drum themselves. It's an oscillator or an oscillating filter going through a wave shaper and then a VCA, or rather two VCAs. So we have our wave shape, the equivalent of our oscillator, from a sine-like tone through to a more distorted, soft clip square-like tone. This then goes through a VCA that's controlled by the decay slider and CV input, and a second VCA with this variable velocity input. Rather than a trigger and an accent, as you see on some other drum patterns or drum machines, we get a full scale CV input to show off the full dynamic range of this thing. It responds to variable voltages. We've also got an envelope to the pitch control, a tune, volt per octave tracking, and a button if you want to just play the kick. So grab some headphones and check out the low end in Kickall. Here's just a quick beat in the background. Nice and simple. And here's Kickall. I'm just going to play with some of the settings to give you a range of these sounds. Now the shape, there's a little bit of fizz, which is really nice to just give that kick some presence, but as we raise it up, we do reach a kind of more clear, pure tone, if you like. And then we start to shape round to that square-like driven tone through the wave shaping. And as you just heard, that pitch bend can really make things smack and click. So I hope you've got on some decent speakers or headphones, because the low end from Kickall is pretty ridiculous. Here it is in isolation. And again, just that little bit of fizz on it. There it is, nice and clean. Some hats and a clap going through the crush delay. And I'm just going to jam a little bit on Kickall. So this patch is just showing the Kickall as an expressive, fulsome synth voice. It's been triggered by a sequence that also has a related velocity sequence into this level control. It's not just an accent input, it's a variable level. So this stepped velocities create nice, interesting, dynamic changes. We've got a volt per octave into the tune, this does track pitch well. I've got some modulation over shape and the decay. We've got a nice expressive synth sound. You can hear it with a crush delay now. We'll listen for a second and then I'll remove the crush delay. So there it is dry. Let's make that a bit more percussive and tune it right down as well. So this patch is here to demonstrate this velocity input. And as I said at the start of the video, this is a full scale CV input, as if you're putting CV into a VCA. It's not just a simple on-off accent type function. Now a couple of things just before we get to that though. Here's the full level signal, triggered constantly. I have noise into the tune, giving us a snare-like tone, imparting the noise in the tuning and the core of this oscillator. And I've also got an offset voltage into decay, which makes this even shorter than it can go at its lowest setting. So that's as low as the actual decay can go. Negative offset, pulling that decay, tightening up the sound even more. Now this velocity input is a random sample and hold signal mixed with an offset. And if I remove the offset and just go full scale random, you can really hear the range of dynamics in this. But for a more constant drum tone, adding some offset first, then adding the sample and hold. We've got accents, rising, falling dynamics, some notes so quiet they're like ghost notes that don't really appear in the beat. So here's a nice plump rump, big bottom, bass drum, kick, hybrid from Kickall. Now, of course, there's a few things in here that are secondary to it, including the crush delay, which has been fed the kick, with the low end then taken out on the hex mix from the crush delay, and there's these hats and snare through some reverb. Now here's Kickall by itself, with volt per octave into tune, some decay modulation and shape modulation, the triggering in the output, giving us this hybrid kick drum or bass drum slash bassline. As I said, it's just a plump rump, a big bottom end, hybrid percussive bass that fills out this beat and patch. So in this patch, we're going to explore using noise to create snare-like tones and just generally experiment to see what AM, FM, audio rate modulation with noise gives us. Now pulling the noise out, here's the sound of Kickall. It's entirely dry. And injecting white noise into the tune, so we're FMing the core of Kickall with noise. There's immediately a ton of great, more aggressive percussion sounds, more snare and clap-like sounds to be had. And of course, attenuating this noise would give you even more scope as well. Now noise to shape. Again, here's the sound without the noise. It doesn't quite take over Kickall as much as it did with the tuning. It's more like a crispy edge to the sound as opposed to the noise really injecting itself into what sounds like the core of the oscillator. We can actually kind of see this wobble that it's giving the sound on the data there. Great for kicks because it gives still got all that low end and thump of a kick, but with this nice gritty, digital, noisy kind of top to it. And noise to the level input, so AM with noise as the modulator. Gives a very kind of chopped up noisy tone. It's as if the noise is being chopped up by the oscillator Here's the Kickall, making 3 percussion sounds and pretending it's a whole drum kit, which I think it does in a nice quirky way. So removing these 2 modulation sources, you can hear quarter note kick, super simple. I then have a pattern playing on beats 2 and 4, so every other beat that this is playing, and that's opening and closing a VCA with an envelope. Putting that into the shape, we get a kind of kick and then kick and clap like layer on beats 2 and 4. Now I have an offbeat pattern opening up a VCA with the same noise source, but by putting it into a different part of the Kickall, it's going to sound different. Let's try into tune. And Kickall's not being re-triggered, it's just there's noise coming into that beat. Right there on the and of 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... I teach drums, I'm counting and shouting, counting at people all the time. Putting the snare back in. With a nice kind of industrially, great little kind of drum kit out of Kickall. Through some distortion and some compression, this would be brutal. So here we're going to explore FM, frequency modulation, and audio rate modulation. I have an oscillating filter, so it's a rather pure sine wave, going into the scope to give us this Lissajous curve in the XY mode, but also going into the tune for FM, frequency modulation of the core pitch of this circuit. But we will try it in the amp section for AM, amplitude modulation, and also in the shape and decay controls as well. So rather simple kick. I've attenuated down the signal going into the tune. And let's just turn that up fully, an FM Kickall. Now I'm going to get rid of the pitch modulation and sweep the frequency of this audio rate sine wave that's modulating Kickall. Adding in some of that pitch bend. And it's great for getting, again, different percussion sounds, non-kick-like sound out of Kickall. So let's try that into other parts of Kickall. Let's set up a basic kind of kick. And it's just a random trigger triggering this. So with that sound, let's now try the same oscillating filter, the sine wave, into the velocity for AM. Very different sound to going into tune for FM. So same sound, let's try audio rate modulating shape. And that's the kind of messy, crunchiest of the lot. Very aggressive though, it's a really nice sound. And that could easily be something out of a digital module from one of a handful of companies known for really aggressive digital modules. Very different sound out of Kickall. So here's a little backing kick and shaker. Playing against Kickall, both totally dry, just mixed together. Now with Kickall playing on its own, this is 3 independent sample and hold signals. It's a 16th note trigger into the trigger in, the output into the scope and the mixer, again completely dry, and then independent unique sample and hold to the tune, shape and the decay, just to blast through a range of tones very quickly. And against that kind of tighter, clickier, sampled kick and shaker, get a nice kind of meaty groove out of it. Now, even though these are all being modulated, we can obviously still shape them with the knobs as we've seen so far. Get a bit more percussive. So here we've got some FM melodies from the Kickall. There is a little bit of crush delay in the background. Let me take that off. So this is a mix in a unity mixer of a volt per octave sequence and an oscillating filter, giving us a sine wave. So there's frequency modulation, both in terms of volt per octave pitch sequencing and audio rate FM. Taking a velocity sequence, a stepped sequence into the velocity input, triggering and coming straight out. So we've got a dynamic FM patch. Notice some notes are louder than others. I'll put that delay back on. Now I bet this isn't the kind of thing that anyone thought they were going to get from a kick drum demo. Let me turn off the effects, and this is entirely Kickall, fully dry. Now simply, this uses noise to trigger the input. Now some modulation over shape. We've got a nice low drone. Now adding in some crush delay through some reverb, which is fed by this and then modulated. We've got really nice low end drones, a hell of a lot of weight coming out of the Kickall. So here's just a quick beat with some hi-hat and clap and the Kickall, just to play around and show you some of the sounds. So having just made that like fake industrial bassy drone, and if you skip to this bit, go back because I really like it. I thought I'd try and make Kickall a standard oscillator, which again isn't something that a kick drum module usually does, but I'll walk you through the patch. So there was some effects you can hear in the background. We'll kill those and show you this completely dry. And this is the same technique as that drone portion of the video, using noise into the trigger input. We impart that noise tone on the oscillator, but we also make this just re-trigger fast enough. It's a nice long note, a volt per octave sequence into tune. And that noise and the higher shape settings give a filter lots to chew on. So this envelope is modulating this filter. So that's it for this video on the Kickall from Befaco. Above anything else, a great kick drum module, but with some modulation and some noise injected, capable of much more in terms of percussive sounds, can be a standard oscillator and a great little synth voice in its own right. Support the work I do on patreon.com/DivKid. Hit like, share, comment, all the usual gabber. Cheers!